Welcome back to the Metro on 1019 WDET FM. I'm Tia Graham. And the city of Detroit has long been a hotbed for jazz. In fact, many musicians would say Motown would not be what it is if it were not for the musical genre itself. Detroit's jazz legends, its musicians, continue to be prominent in supporting bands, working in studio sessions, and even performing on talk shows. But while it's still relevant, people associate jazz with the old heads, with the unks and the aunties. Now, even as we continue on, we're wondering, how can we bring in a new generation to the beauty and the creation of jazz music? Robin Wilson wants to bring jazz education to the forefront through a children's book. Jazz-a-Bet, an original jazz alphabet, is Wilson's latest book and is now out. Joining us in studio to discuss the new book is Robin Wilson. Wilson is also the owner of Vesey Lane Goods. She's an educator, an author, and a multidisciplinary artist. So many different things, multifaceted woman. Robin, welcome to the Metro.
Thank you for having me.
So, Robin, the last time we spoke, you were opening up Vesey Lane Goods. You've been successful with Vesey Lane Goods. I've seen tons of activities happening, so many art shows happening. Talk to us just a little bit before we get to the book about Vesey Lane Goods and what you've been able to do with it.
Absolutely. So I am the founder and owner of Vesey Lane Goods, and we are a stationery company. We specialize in greeting cards, gifts, and home decor, but we're also a gathering place for the community. Many of our customers are art patrons, and so it's a privilege for me as an artist myself to be able to work with and collaborate with other artists in the space.
Vesey, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Just had the postcard that you gave me.
Yes.
And I have it. I'm going to frame it. I'm going to do some artsy crafty stuff with it, but I have that postcard. I'm going to put it in a frame really soon and have it put on the wall. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
But we're talking about jazz. We're talking about your love for jazz. You've already written a previous book. Yes. I believe this is 2009, I believe it was released.
Yes, it was first released in 2009, and that was Mama Got Rhythm and Daddy Got Rhyme.
Yes. So you have this theme of using music to connect young people with reading and learning. So talk a little bit about why you chose jazz as a focal point to do that, to reach young people.
Well, I grew up in a musical household. My parents were baby boomers. And so everything from Motown hits to jazz, gospel music, you name it, I heard it in our household. And so one of my favorite pastimes with my father as I got older, we would ride in the car together and, on our way to the gym, we would listen to jazz. And my dad was a jazz head. So a lot of my exposure to jazz specifically came through my father. And it was also a way that I learned when I was younger. Music was a portal to learning for me. I actually learned or remembered how to spell respect by listening to Aretha Franklin. So that is why. That is my why. Music was always a part of my upbringing.
That is cool. I think we all kind of, I won't say all, but similarly, I have boomer parents, grew up listening to all things from yacht rock to jazz to gospel to rock to rap when it started to come up. So it's just so many different ways that you can pull from what you learn growing up and to bring it to the next generation. So let's talk about the book that we are here to talk about, Jazz-a-Bet, an original jazz alphabet. Yes. It is absolutely a gorgeous book. It is beautifully illustrated by Rebecca Silva.
Yes.
And just talk a little bit about the book.
Yes. Well, I first have to thank my publisher, Editorial Goon Press, because I actually met my publisher 3 years ago when I was selected to go with my colleagues to Brazil on a Fulbright Hayes fellowship. And I did not know it at the time, but I would meet my publisher while I was there. And so after I went to a poetry open mic night, I had a chance to perform my poem at that open mic night. And the mother, Paula, of one of the owners of Editorial Goon, was there, and she said, you really should talk to my daughter and her husband about publishing your book. So when I returned to the U.S., I connected with them and I sent them my manuscript, and I also sent them a recording of me performing it. And they said, we want to publish this. And it was an amazing experience and moment, because this was years in the making. I had submitted my work to other publishers that it was rejected, which isn't uncommon. Yeah. But I had not given up on getting it published. I just knew that I had to work with the right publisher. And because Gail is also a poet and his background is in poetry, when he read it, he understood it. And so that started the journey to getting my work, the second work, in print.
And, just it's so interesting to hear that it took another poet to see that talent, to see that the importance of your work in order to get it published, which we often talk about, just being in community with people and the importance of having connections with folks. You found a connection in Brazil.
Yes.
in the most odd way. You weren't even looking for it, but there's this connection that emerged. So, and talk a little bit about how that influenced you to create this book bilingually. It's a bilingual book.
It's a bilingual book. So in Brazil, they speak Portuguese. And while I knew that at some point in my writing career that I wanted my work to be translated so that it could be enjoyed by children all over the world, I had no idea that the first time that my work would be translated, that it would be translated into Portuguese. But it's still very exciting. And so Gail, he translated my work from English into Portuguese, and we spent hours talking about the nuances of the language, because some of the language that's used in English, they are culturally based. And so we went through that process of discussing what certain things mean so that the translation could properly reflect that for the children. And last year I did have a chance to go back to Brazil, and I had a chance to go to different schools to do different school visits. But in terms of my work actually physically being here in the United States in its published form, this is the first time that it's now available, and that's exciting.
And when we think about just the fact that it is bilingual, it's in Portuguese as well as it's in English. And you talked just a little bit about that. And I want to build on that just a little bit, because it's so important that you all went through that book with a fine-tooth comb, trying to figure out, well, if we say boom bop pow, how would it be translated to Portuguese children? You know?
Right.
So how did you guys go through that?
Yes. So we spent time going through each stanza, and I explained the meaning behind certain phrases. And for example, in Brazil, they have ice cream trucks, but their ice cream trucks do not sing or have music. Oh. They just don't. And so in my story, in my poem, there's a stanza where I talk about Cab Calloway as a cat's meow, and I talk about how that's the music that I'm imagining is coming from the ice cream truck in my poem. Well, he had to modify it a little bit for Portuguese, the language, because there isn't music that emanates from ice cream trucks in Brazil.
Could you imagine just walking like the street? There's the ice cream man, but there's no sound.
There's no sound.
He's just rolling down the street.
That's right. That's right. So those things mattered. But the reception that we received last year when we went to go and visit the different schools in Salvador, Bahia, was positive, and the kids were really excited, and the parents, they actually joined in and singing certain stanzas with their children, because I could tell that they felt it was relatable, and that made me feel good too.
And the one thing that a lot of folks, even myself, I learned one of the largest populations of African people outside of Africa is actually in South America, in Brazil.
Yes, it is.
So when we think about just the grander view of the diaspora, the African diaspora, the impacts of the enslavement of African people and the transportation of African people, and how we all similarly are connected with jazz and music, and how some of those rhythm lines, some of those bass lines and drums, they all come from this similar space and place. So can you talk about the relatability there because of those just nuances of our great migration?
Absolutely. So you're right. When I was there were actually many things that I could relate to as an African American woman. Call and response is something that we do, whether we're in church singing gospel music or whether we are performing jazz solos. It's not uncommon for us to use call and response. And the same is true in Salvador Bahia. And there's a lot of Yoruban words that are still used in Salvador. In addition to the Portuguese language, it's almost like it's embedded. And so when I first went for my fellowship experience 3 years ago, I had an opportunity to also learn about the different drumming techniques, and my colleagues, we had an opportunity to participate in drumming sessions where we learned how to play things like the conga drums. And drumming is something that's really important in Salvador Bahia. In fact, one cultural reference that I can offer to listeners is most of us, if we haven't been living under, a rock, we know who Michael Jackson is. Yeah. So Michael Jackson, there was one point where Michael Jackson actually traveled to Salvador Bahia, and you probably have heard his song, They Don't Really Care About Us. And that was actually performed in an area where I had a chance to go. And it's just, the drumming is really important. They have drumming throughout the year, actually, that takes place in many places throughout Salvador Bahia. So there's definitely a connection, and understanding the connection between the culture and the music is very important because you can't separate the two.
That is absolutely fascinating to me, the connections there using music and how the young kids and children and families within Brazil, as you're traveling through, are literally experiencing something. Number one, for the first time, they're seeing themselves in a new way, but they're experiencing what we've been able to experience here in the United States in terms of discovering the importance of music and jazz music to the foundations of a lot of our cultural exports and who we are as people here in the city of Detroit.
That's right.
So I do want to talk to you just a little bit about just the book itself, the importance of having the book being jazz and teaching young people through jazz. Oftentimes, do you hear young people say they don't like jazz?
All the time. I've gone to so many different schools, and often I will start by asking children, what music do you love to listen to? And many times they'll say R&B or rap, and I'll let them know that I love listening to that music too. But even with my first book, that was really the goal, is to help young people understand the connection between the music that they listen to today and jazz. If there wasn't jazz, then we wouldn't have R&B. We wouldn't have the music that we have today. And I think in a similar vein, my goal for Jazzabet and Original Jazz Alphabet is to reach an even younger generation with the music, to help them to understand that jazz can be cool. There's many different types of jazz. And even when I taught at the elementary school level, sometimes I would, when we did brain breaks, I would let my young scholars listen to some jazz so they could hear the different kinds of jazz music that there is. And they would sometimes say they didn't like the more traditional jazz music. But then when I expose them to jazz artists like Trombone Shorty, yes, or Gregory Porter, yes, they're like, well, we like this. And when I would tell them, well, this is jazz, and they would realize, oh, there's more than one type of jazz music.
Yes, those are great gateway artists, by the way, just to kind of tiptoe into jazz, and then before you know it, you're kind of like just all the way into it, which is great.
That's right.
But before we do let you go, is there any way that you can read just a little bit from the book?
Yes, I would love to do that. And so I sing parts of the story, and so I will start by singing the first part. There's a sound on the street. There's a sound on the street. It will make you strut and move your feet. Boom, boom, be dome, they call it jazz. Bebop, be boom, be dome, they call it jazz. In the Big Apple, an album spins in apartment A. Amazing, awesome Armstrong song swirled through an open window to the stoop below. Boom, boom, be dome, they call it jazz. Bebop, be boom, be dome, they call it jazz. At a busy bopping bus stop, finger snap and pop, bad boy buddy plucks a burning bass, boom boom be dome, bebop to the boogity beat. Children eat cones and bob their heads to crazy cool tunes from the ice cream truck. Cab Calloway's music is the cat's meow. Heidi ho, Cab is the cat's meow.
I love that so much. Thank you so much for performing. And I hope that whenever parents are listening, parents, grandparents, aunts, and uncles, that you're listening and you're thinking to yourself, I'm going to sing and read just like that to my kids tonight. Robin Wilson is an author, educator, and multidisciplinary visual artist. She also owns VC Lane Goods, and there will be a book launch for Jazzabet and an original jazz alphabet. It's happening Saturday, April 26th at VC Lane Goods. Where should they go?
They should go to our website at www.vclanegoods.com to upcoming events to register.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Coming up next, Americans waste a lot of food, about 30% of it, according to the Department of Agriculture. Reducing waste in the global food supply might be a big task for a single person, but you can turn your food scraps into nutrient-rich compost. So, do you compost? What's that been like for you? Is it hard? Is it easy? Has it been rewarding? Do you gamify it? Let us know. The number is 313-577-1019. Stay right there on the Metro. We'll be right back.